coming to you from Israel in the Galilee. And it's the 11th of November. It's a Saturday, Shabbat, and it's 10:50 in the morning. And I'm having a late start because thankfully I slept in a little bit today, and preparing this took a considerable amount of time. So I'm going to go into the live stream and make sure everything's okay, like we have sound and picture and all of that, and then we'll begin. So far looking good. Make sure everything's okay, like we have sound and picture and all of that. Yeah, it looks like we're okay. Let me adjust. Okay. Looks like we're good. Let me do a tiny bit of housekeeping here in the chat. We might have a limited amount of people in here today because of the hour of the broadcast, but they'll just pick it up on the as a video. And people are starting to come in. Almost done. Remember that my videos are in the live section on the YouTube channel. They're not on the videos because they got a few things in there, but I basically do everything with the live stream. So you go to the live section, even though it could have been a month ago, that's where they archive them. Almost there. I put a rough sketch of what I'm going to cover today up on my Telegram channel. And it's going to be more encompassing here. But I'm going to put my sunglasses on to relax my eyes while I do this. Okay. We're a Bible-believing site, so let's do our praise. There is no God like Jehovah. 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 There is no Messiah like Yeshua. 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 I think I'm going to take this hat off. This is a long hair cowboy hat. You could probably see it. It's beaver. And this hat was probably made a long time ago. Okay. So the Gaza war is still continuing. Not a lot of change. During the live stream, you're going to see me drink from this, which is made by Tabasco. It's a Bloody Mary mix. There's no alcohol in it. It's the cayenne pepper tomato juice type mix, and I really enjoy this tremendously. Great way to get some cayenne in me without having to eat. I don't like to eat before the live stream because then I get tired. I'm old. All right. So the Gaza war is continuing, and the rockets, we had about a 14-hour lull with no rockets. But they started again a little bit this morning. So they're still able to fire rockets. That's probably not going to last a lot longer. And then it's going to be a whole other ball game here. Because it's going to evolve into what's next. Once Hamas can't shoot the rockets, what are they going to do? Well, Hezbollah may start opening up the front up in Lebanon bigger and bigger to try to save Hamas, but I'm not overly, I wouldn't expect it too much. I don't think so. I think they're just going to be doing harassing to keep our troops up at the border and keep us with constant missile attacks, but not into the interior of Israel, because then they're going to get all sorts of horrible things happening to them from Israel. Syria is sort of not doing much right now. There's all kinds of internal fighting and everything else. They're not very active. And Iraq, of course, can't attack us directly. The Houthis keep trying to get missiles up into Israel, and they're failing. So that's not a real big factor. The Houthis invading Israel by ground is fairly ridiculous. They're not going to do it. They'd have to go through Saudi Arabia, and it'd be nothing. You're not going to see that. Jordan is still acting like they're America and Israel's friend, but I know that'll change. In the Bible, I can guarantee it. It's Ammon, Edom, and Moab, and they're going to turn against us, as will Egypt. You can take that to the bank. Iraq already has, So we have talked in the past about a snare being laid for America. And let me try to find that scripture in my notes to establish it for people. I've just found it. Jeremiah 50:24. So people that may not be familiar with it or haven't listened to me before will understand this. The daughter of Babylon is the subject in Jeremiah 50 and 51, which is good old USA. It says in Jeremiah 50:24, I have laid a snare for thee, and thou art also taken, O Babylon, and thou wast not aware. Thou art found and also caught, because thou hast striven against the Lord. Now, 163 countries in the United Nations out of, I think, 194 recognize a Palestinian state. That means they want to give the land that God gave to Israel by covenant in Genesis 15, verse 18. Let me go there. I got to lay the groundwork for you to really understand this. If I don't, you'll understand it, but you're not going to get it from Bible perspective. Genesis 15:18. In the same day, the Lord made a covenant with Abram, saying, unto thy seed have I given this land, from the river of Egypt unto the great river, the river Euphrates. The Nile is Egypt, and Euphrates is Euphrates. The other border that we pick up from Bible for Israel is the Mediterranean, and I'm assumptive that the other border on the east is the Persian Gulf. So, what does this look like? Generally speaking, it goes like this. It's about 100 times larger than the Israel we have now. This is commonly referred to in Bible circles as Greater Israel, or Yisrael Gadol. Yisrael Katan, small Israel, is what we have now. Okay, the Bible refers to the land we have now as Judah and Jerusalem. So when you read Judah and Jerusalem, you know it's pertaining to us now. We just got all of Jerusalem in the 67 war. So we've had that only since 1967. So when you read Daniel 9:24, it says 70 weeks. Every single Hebrew manuscript I've ever read doesn't say that. It's only the English translations that say it. What it says is 70, 70, Shavim, Shavim. I've done this a lot of times. I put the words up on the screen. It's the same exact words. So it means two 70s. The first 70 is the Babylonian captivity, which Daniel was in. That's over a long time ago. The next 70 starts when we have Jerusalem. And I'm not going to, I'm going to move through this a little bit on the quick side, okay? But I'm going to make the point. Daniel 9:24. Now, this is the kingpin of false doctrine. Okay? No, I'm going to show it to you in the Hebrew words, okay, in a way that you'll be able to see that it is the same words. Now, the Hebrew reads from right to left. So when I put it up, you'll see it says on the right-hand side, Dan 9:24, up towards the top, okay? And there's a little bit of vowel pointing in here. It's a dot over the first letter, which is a shin. Now, the vowel pointing came many, even thousands of years after this was written. This is a way the rabbis used to twist the scriptures, okay? And it is not in the actual manuscripts when they were written. They started doing this thousands of years later. And they say, no, when it has a dot, it means this, not that. But in any event, you'll see the exact same dot in both the words, okay, which I'm going to put up now. Now, you're not going to be able to understand what it says, but if you see the words, you see it's right to left. So the first appearance is up on the top, and the second appearance is underneath it to the right. And it's the same exact words. Let me see if I can make this. I hope you're getting it. Shavim, Shavim is what it's pronounced. It's two 70s. So the second 70 starts in 67, and I'll explain why. Because Daniel 9:24 reads like this: 70 70s, that's two 70s. It's not 70 times 70 or anything like that. It means two 70s in Hebrew. And Sheva is 7. Shavim, which is what this word is 70. 5 is Hamesh. 50 is Hamishim. Okay? You're getting the idea? Tesha is 9. Teshin is 90. Sheva is 7. Shavim is 70. It doesn't mean weeks. That's absurd. Okay. 70 70s are determined upon thy people, which is Israel, and upon thy holy city, which is Jerusalem. Now, we did not have Jerusalem in its entirety in 1948. We got it in 67 in that war. And part of it contains East Jerusalem, which is where the actual temple would go. So to say that this applies to us before we really had Jerusalem, we only had a piece of it, wouldn't make sense. So it starts in 67. And it goes 70 years. 77, 87, 97, 2007, 2017, 2027, 2037. However, there was no Gregorian calendar when this was written, so it's impossible for it to apply to Pope Gregory's Gregorian calendar. That's not the Bible calendar. The Bible calendar has 12 30-day months for 360 days a year. The beginning of the month matches the appearance of the new moon sliver, it's supposed to. So it's also called a new moon feast, okay? So to make a calendar like the rabbis do, where they can tell you where what day Yom Kippur occurs on 6 or 8 years in the future, which is what they do, it's a joke. That's their calendar, not God's calendar. Okay? They can't do a farmer's almanac on God's calendar. So the days in a year are 5 days less. 70 years is 350 days, which, let's just round it off. 300 and it reduces it by a year from 2037 to 2036. And this is not the second coming. This is the end of the great day of the Lord, which is also called by the church world Gog and Magog. Now, Ezekiel 38 and 39 depict this battle. And the same circumstances or battle is predicted in the entire book of Joel, chapters 1 to 3. And it's also predicted in Ezekiel chapters 8 through 11, which people that the church never talks about that. In that, you see the people that are grievous of the injustices being done to Israel, being done at the temple, have a mark placed on their forehead. And when the great day of the Lord comes with the invasion, nothing bad happens to them. And if you read Ezekiel 8 and 9, you'll see the image that make it desolate, which is the abomination of desolation. That's Greek. This is Hebrew. Image that make it desolate. It's the same thing. Is set up in the north gate of the next temple, not in the holiest of holies. And you also see the glory of God of Israel present in this temple because he leaves, and that's when the attack happens. And they never talk about that in the churches. They don't want you to know about that. That's the angel that was with Moses and Aaron in the wilderness with the children of Israel. His name would be Michael. And God, in Exodus 23, we read God put his name, Jehovah, into this angel. Okay? This angel, when they set the abomination of desolation up in Ezekiel 8 to 11, you see him leaving the temple. So that's the desolation. He's not there anymore. There's no one to make the offerings to. God put his name in this angel, Michael, so he could receive the offerings in the place of Jehovah, because if Jehovah came down from heaven, the whole place would probably burn up. He's so holy. So he uses Michael, and he leaves the temple. And where does he go? It tells you he goes to the Mount of Olives. The Mount of Olives is 1/3 of a mile to the east of the Temple Mount, the correct Temple Mount. The Dome of the Rock is not on the Temple Mount. It's 600, 800, 900 feet away from where the Temple Mount is. The Wailing Wall thing is a ruse to make you think that Yeshua's prophecy, like in Matthew 24, Luke 21, and Mark 13, with not one stone will be standing from the buildings. They do that to show Yeshua is a false prophet, okay? By saying, look, the wall is still standing. That right near, very close, very, very close to the temple was a Roman fort called Fort Antonio or Fort Antonius, however you pronounce it. And the wall from that is left standing. So when they're praying at the Wailing Wall, they're praying at a wall from a Roman fort. The temple was not over there. Okay? the Talmud, which is what the rabbis go by, they rate it higher than uh, the first five books of the Bible, the Torah. They say that the Moses gave the written law to the heathen, the goyim, but the real law was oral. So then they took the oral law and wrote it down, and their written law overrides the Moses law, and that's how they practice. And it contradicts Moses' law heavily. And in the Talmud, it says that Yeshua was not a prophet, he was not the Son of God, he did not rise from the dead. And that's, to them, that's their Bible. It has nothing to do with the Bible, but they say it is. So you need to have this background, I think, to understand things, or you'd be confused. And the church never teaches these things. Now, when the glory of God of Israel leaves the temple because the image that provoketh the jealousy is set up, he goes to the Mount of Olives, and that's his feet that touch down on the Mount of Olives. And he waits for the attack, which, if you read Daniel carefully, it's about 45 days. And half of Jerusalem goes, in Zechariah 14, we read the great day of the Lord. Half of Jerusalem goes into captivity, and the rest remain in Jerusalem. They don't leave because they have the mark on their forehead. Nothing happens to them. It says so. They don't need to leave. The women are raped, the houses are looted, and half goes into captivity. Now that opens up time at times and half a time. It's not 42 months and 1260 days. They teach that because they don't know what to teach, other than they won't teach the truth if they even know it. The first time was the Egypt captivity. The second time was the Babylonian captivity. The third time was the Roman captivity, 70 AD, Titus and all of them. And the half a time is the great day of the Lord, which is over in 2036. So it's down the road, and that's your Gog and Magog. And it doesn't last no 12 years or anything like that, okay? All right. So you need to understand we're not headed into Gog and Magog. And it says in Ezekiel 38, at the time that happens, that Israel is living in peace and safety and rest without bars and walls. Now, can you possibly imagine how that could be for today? With all the people running in bomb shelters, and it's absurd to think that. If anybody teaches you that, you should run away from them. They're obviously blind spiritually, or they're evil, false prophets, false pastors, false teachers. Okay? So what's going on is not Gog and Magog. It's Zechariah 12. And the church never teaches Zechariah 12. Because you see, the two witnesses appear in Zechariah 12, verse 6. They burn their enemies up on the right hand and the left hand. They never teach that. Never. And it says the people there look upon the one whom they have pierced. That's Yeshua. And they mourn for him as one mourns for a firstborn or their only. They don't teach that. And before they look upon Yeshua, the Spirit of the Holy Spirit is poured out on them. It says it right in Zechariah 12. And then what happens when that happens? It's too shocking. If I tell you, you'll think I'm crazy. Because you're comparing the Bible to what the church teaches. That's why this is what the Bible teaches. In John 6:40, what does it say? And this is the will of him that sent me. So this is Father God Jehovah's will. That everyone which seeth the Son and believeth on him may have everlasting life. Right at that time. It doesn't say in the millennium. The church will tell you the millennium. It doesn't say that. And then it says, and I will raise him up at the last day. So they have eternal life before they get raised up at the last day. Duh. And what does the last day mean? Well, it really is a takeoff from the Feast of Tabernacles, with it's a 7-day holiday, and then the 8th day is the last day. But that's a little complicated. It's very simple. The last day means there are no more days. So the millennium is over, Satan's been released, gathers them like the sand of the sea to attack Jerusalem, New Jerusalem. Fire comes down from heaven, burns the whole universe up. We meet him in the air because there's no place left to stand on, and then we go on clouds up to the third heaven with Yeshua and Jehovah for eternity. That's what that means. Okay? There's no left behind rapture in the Bible. This is the only rapture. There's no catching away and then this rapture at the end of the world. That's malarkey. It's like trying to ask me to prove Donald Duck is not one of the apostles. I can't. It's not in the Bible. Donald Duck's not in there. He's not mentioned as a pastor or an apostate or anything. You know, how do you prove? There's no other rapture. It's only this one. And everybody goes up on the same day. There's no left behind rapture. When you read Matthew 13, the harvest, the tares and the wheat, who gets taken out first? The tares, the bad ones, the children of the devil. The righteous being yanked up first is a farce. It's nonsense. As is the mid-trib and the post-trib. It all happens on the last day, and everybody goes up at the same time. No left behind rapture. People teaching you left behind rapture are teaching you doctrines of demons. They're either blind or they're your enemy. Okay? And if the blind follow the blind, they both fall in the pit. Is that what you want? If you reject knowledge, Yeshua is going to reject you. Is that what you want? Now, you want to hear about the Iran war, so let's go to work. Okay? Now, I'm going to use notes because I did this when I was fresh early in the morning. And it was a lengthy thing. I put it on Telegram. If you want to go to my Telegram, download the app Telegram Messenger, install it. It's a free app. Telegram has 700 million members. It's a great place. I have almost 700 subscribers in Telegram. Nobody has had any problems. Nobody. Send me an email. My email address is in the chat. It's israelgiving with the number 7 at Gmail. Israel Giving, one word, with the digit 7 at gmail.com. It's also in the lowest line down in the description box. Just put Telegram in the subject header, and I'll send you the invite link. You click on it, 2-3 seconds later, you're in. It's all free. All right. What this whole thing is about here in the Middle East is America and Iran. This thing with October 7th was a provocation for Israel. I'm not going to deal with the conspiracy theories here, but America does not have clean hands, and in my opinion, and it got Israel fighting Hamas in Gaza in a huge way. And this Hamas attack was probably 1, 2, or more years in the preparation. 300 miles of tunnels, my gosh. So many rockets and missiles, man, you know. So what happened is Israel started voraciously attacking Hamas. Okay, missiles are flying, bombs are falling, all right. America all of a sudden says, okay, you need weapons, we'll give you weapons. Austin's on TV and he's saying this. He's saying, well, Israel does what they want. We just make suggestions. Be very careful when you hear the head military guy, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, talk like that, because that's not ever the case. Okay? Never, ever. There's no free lunch with America. Forget that. So they want Israel taking all the blame for what happens in Gaza. Remember that. So they gave us weapons like they give Ukraine weapons. Did they give us a lot of weapons? They did. Did they give us good bombs and stuff? They did. They did. They really did. Are we able to bust up the tunnels with the bombs they gave us? To some extent, yes. Yes, we are. Are they helping with reconnaissance and giving us military counsel? Yes. Are they fighting shoulder to shoulder with us? No. Did they say they were going to attack Hezbollah in Lebanon if they opened up a second front or anyone else? They did. Did they attack Hezbollah? No, they did not. Did Hezbollah really open up a second front? Beyond the shadow of a doubt, by anybody's definition, they did. People from the cities near the Lebanon border have had to evacuate for weeks now. 2 weeks, I guess. Missiles come in near the border. Mortars come in. They fire anti-tank rockets. They've tried to do incursions into the country. They fly drones. Everything. It's a front. We have a good 100,000 soldiers up there with tanks, mobile artillery, everything else. That's not a front. So America did not keep their word. Remember that. Their cop-out for not keeping their word is that it's not a real front. Maybe if they, destroy Haifa and Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, that'll be a front. By the way, the Dome of the Rock is in Jerusalem. The Muslim states typically avoid shooting rockets into Jerusalem because they're afraid they could hit the Dome of the Rock, the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and that stuff, which the Sunni Muslims don't believe is such a holy place, but the Shiites do. And they consider it the fourth holy place in the world. Now, if one of these Muslim terrorist groups does fire a missile into the Dome of the Rock, could it seriously destroy the Dome of the Rock? Well, it would depend on the missile. Most likely the missiles that could hit Jerusalem are long-range missiles with a bigger warhead. They wouldn't make it look like a parking lot per se, but they would cause severe and serious damage to the place. I never went in there, but I've been up there outside many years ago, and it could cause a lot of damage. Now, that's with a direct hit. What if it hits on the grounds nearby and so forth? But what would the Muslim terrorists do? Would they get on the media and say, "We apologize to the world. It was a mistake. Please forgive us"? If you hear that, there's more red alerts coming in. Not in my area. I have the phone keyed to red alerts all over Israel. If you go to my Telegram, I frequently show you how to sign up for free red alerts real time on Telegram. I show you a map where the missile or the mortar or the drone or the whatever it was in what part of Israel, and gives you the time and the names of the cities all in English. It's free. No, they'll say Israel shot that and they're blaming us for it. And what is the Shiite world going to say? No, you're a bunch of liars? No, they're going to say Israel did it. And what's that going to do? Oh, you know what it's going to do. It's going to light things up incandescent. It's like boom, Is that something that's likely to happen? Not that likely, but could happen. Israel will have the radar trajectory of the missile that did it. America probably will. America and Israel will say it was not from Israel, and the Shiite Muslim nations will say they're infidels and they're lying and it was. That could happen. I'm not expecting it, but it could happen. And if it does happen, nobody really knows what the outcome would be. And that's why I don't think they're going to go down that road. But it could happen by accident. You got to understand. Okay. America and her allies currently have 56 Navy warships in theater in the Middle East. Now, why in the world do you need 56 warships to attack Hezbollah and Gaza, who have no navies and have no air forces and have next to no armor of any real substance? You don't. Why are they here? They're here for Iran. That's why. America wants a declaration of war against Iran. So it has to provoke Iran and stir it up. So that's what you're seeing. Although Hamas initiated the attack, Hezbollah is reluctant to listen to Iran and just go, all out and start attacking Tel Aviv and Jerusalem and Haifa and whatever with missiles, because they know Israel's going to come in and bomb the daylights out of them. And when the smoke clears, they would have blown up some buildings in the cities in Israel, and then they would be on their way, like Hamas, into non-existence as a military organization. Now, when we finish up the missiles being fired out of Gaza, which is maybe another 2, 3, 4 days, I think, not much. Hamas has got a choice. They could continue doing stupid attacks where they come out of tunnels and try to bushwhack Americans, and they generally all or many of them get killed, and then they surrender or get taken captive, or they run back in their holes. Then we see where they came from. We blow up the tunnel entrances. A few days ago, we had blown up over 100, about 150. We're probably at 200 or more tunnel entrances blown up. Now, 300 miles of tunnels, they might have 300 entrances and exits, or 400, but it's just a matter of a few days, they'll be gone too. Now, if you get rid of 75% of their tunnels, there's a real problem for them to operate in the tunnels, It's not the way it used to be. It's a problem for them. So that's the direction we're headed right now, to stop the missiles. Now, it's a matter of days, and what do we do with probably at least 45,000 Hamas terrorist soldiers? Many of them have gone into the south of Gaza. Now, this is another idiotic thing that America pushed Israel to do. Egypt won't take the Gazan civilians because the Muslim states know that they're there to protect Hamas as human shields, which is acceptable to them, apparently. And Hamas is designed to keep Israel suppressed, keep life bad in Israel, make it so many Jews don't ever want to move to Israel. Okay, stop Aliyah, reverse Bible prophecy, make it bad in Israel, and cause economic drain on Israel. Every time we fire an Iron Dome, it's $100,000 per missile, and usually they fire 2 at a time. We have prototypes of those lasers for anti-missiles, but I have not heard of them being used. They were supposedly deployed, but I haven't heard anything about it. So that doesn't mean they're not deployed. It means that if they are deployed, they're not talking about it. So that's all I can tell you from that. I don't know anything. It's not in the media. I have no idea what's going on with those lasers. There's been no reports from the Palestinians that the lasers have been used. So I doubt they are. So now we see Iran attacking American bases in the Middle East voraciously, several times a day. They're restricting their attacks to Iraq and Syria bases. Guys on these bases have gotten traumatic brain injuries. What are we talking about? This comes from being around a lot of explosions or explosions. So missiles and mortars are coming into the base and they're taking shelter. And the percussive force is rattling their brains. And then their thinking gets off. They could be goofy, they could be irritable, they could be daydreaming. I don't know all the symptoms, but it's a wartime injury. I'm not a doctor, I can't comment on that, but it's called by the military traumatic brain injury. And they evacuated a lot of them to the military base in Germany, where they have more sophisticated medical hospitals and diagnostics and whatnot, so they could treat the poor soldiers. Also, I heard they have some broken eardrums, which means the missiles were landing there where they are, and it would also mean they're not dug in 30, 40 feet under the ground in serious bunkers. Now, logic would dictate if there was an alert of missiles and things coming into the base and they all went 30, 40 feet under the ground, all the Iraqi militias need to do is fly missiles into the base. They all go underground, right? And then invade the base because they're all underground and then blow them up in their bunkers underground. So they can't do that, but they probably have some light sheltering they can go to. It might be sandbags piled up or something like that, right? I don't know, but they're not 30, 40 feet under the ground. They wouldn't get traumatic brain injury and broken eardrums from a lightweight missile. You know, if they were underground and a 250-pound missile with a warhead 250 pounds came in, that might happen. But even then, it probably wouldn't happen. So, Iran is provoking America. About 3 days ago, they made a public statement, Iran did, that they're going to expand their attacks, which would be assumptive they're going to hit more American bases in the Middle East. They're not stopping. They told America they're not scared of their aircraft carriers, and they're not stopping. That's what they're doing. They have not yet started hitting bases outside of Iraq and Syria, but I do expect Iran will follow through by having their militias do it. Okay? The Houthis in Yemen are, for the most part, pretty much just a minor harassment to Israel. They're able to knock down almost all their missiles and rockets and drones, so it's more of a harassment than a serious threat. Now, America's been fighting back against the Iranian attacks on their bases, but not with great ferocity. Okay, they sent 2 F-15s to bomb some weapon depots, storage facilities that the Iranian missiles militias had in the area. That's not a serious counterattack. 2 jets, 24 jets bombing all kinds of targets would be a relatively serious counterattack. At this point, we have to stop and we have to say Biden is scared. When I say Biden, I say his administration, not the Pentagon, the civilian administration. The Pentagon is dictated to by the political civilian people in the White House, the cabinet. They don't call the shots. They give advice and they persuade and they could say, I have to reject, this is horrible, you'll make a mistake. They tend to work pretty good together, but the political agenda overrides what the Pentagon says. Biden is in an election year. A year from now, there'll be an election. So he's literally in an election year and he's scared. He obviously wants to get reelected, and I don't think prophetic time will last that long by a long shot. But how does he do this? How does he stop Iran? Now, one thing America could do, and at this point it would be the smartest thing for America, is to pull all their forces out of the Pacific, pull out of NATO, and the Middle East, and bring everything back and protect America, because she is about to be attacked. Will America ever do that? Absolutely not. They are, in Bible prophecy, the great voice, the hammer of the whole earth. They're not going to lose their control over the Pacific with Taiwan, Japan, South Korea, Guam, Philippines, Australia, whatever. They're not. And they're not going to lose their influence in Europe with NATO. And they're not going to lose their influence in the Middle East at all. It's not on the table for America. That's not an option America would entertain. Smartest thing for them, least likely to ever happen. With the bases being attacked in the Middle East, what do? Do they just pull out of the Middle East? No, they won't do it. They'll eventually do it. It says in the Bible they will run away, but we're not there yet. And where does it say that in the Bible, will they run away? Well, I'll pull it up. Jeremiah 50:44. I'll read it. Behold, he shall come up like a lion from the swelling of Jordan unto the habitation of the strong. That's Israel. We're not strong yet, but we will be at Zechariah 12. But I will make them suddenly run away from her. That's Israel. Who is the chosen man that I may appoint? Okay, it's speaking the two witnesses are operating openly then, and then that's what this is talking about. But they will run away. But anyway, what do they do about Iran? Iran is, with the nuclear treaties, is irritating America. What do they do? How do they get rid of Iran? How do they stop it? Iran's not cooperating. Will bombing Iran work? Can they severely damage Iran? Yes. But just like Gaza has gone underground, so will Iran. You got it? Iran has to have tunnel networks 3 times, 5 times bigger and better than anything Hamas has. They have underground airplane hangars where there's a runway outside and they go down a ramp. They're probably 60, 100 feet underground and, probably have 8, 10, 15 feet of reinforced concrete supporting it. How are you going to get through that, the nuclear facilities are underground, their command centers are underground, they probably have all sorts of tunnel networks. I'm going to take you through the actual invasion of Iran and what it's going to look like in a moment or two. Okay? So, essentially, in bombing Iran is going to have an effect, but Iran knows that America is likely going to bomb them. Remember, 54 warships in the theater now, mostly American, almost all. Many aircraft have been brought in to different locations in the Middle East, UAE, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, where America is stockpiling them, getting ready to attack Iran, not Hezbollah. Look, one aircraft carrier with 3 or 4 escort vessels could demolish Hezbollah by itself. Put them in the Dark Ages. They didn't need 2 plus all kinds of other ships. What do they need all that for? Iran. More ships will come. Now, I'm thinking. Iran knows this, that invading them is very difficult, but bombing them is not that difficult. They're prepared, which means they're underground. Okay? So now I want to walk you through, to stop Iran, to shut Iran down, means bombing and invading Iran. Look at us. Israel's considered a very high-ranking world power. Okay? And look at us with Hamas. That's not Iran. That's Hamas in Gaza. Imagine Iran. And we're next door. We have easy access. America doesn't have easy access to Iran. Let's talk about it. How does America invade Iran? Good question. The ideal way to invade Iran would be by ground. But there's no ground access, really. Azerbaijan and them, they're not going to go for it. Iraq, they'd have to conquer Iraq to, stage massive amount of troops and equipment in Iraq and then go in by land. And they'd have to have a war with Iraq first, which they could do, but it's not likely. There's other options. Syria, not going to help the case. Will the UAE let them? The UAE is already letting them stage equipment, planes, missiles, and whatever, and even soldiers there. Will the UAE actually deploy their own soldiers with America to attack Iran? Chances of this happening are probably 2/3, 65% chance. Yeah, it's pretty likely. What would they come up with? Not much. They don't have much. 10, 20,000 soldiers maximum they'd give them. Would Saudi Arabia help in? Again, 2/3 chance, no. I mean, yeah, they might. But again, it's going to be 10, 20, 30,000. It's not going to be significant. America's not going to care about it. Okay? We've got to remember, America has 14,000 warplanes. Iran has 346. And the Iranian warplanes are mostly Cold War era. The additional problems is like they have F-4s, F-15s, they have Russian planes, they have this plane, that plane. There's a mishmash, a conglomeration of planes coming from different countries and different models. Okay? And they've been unable to obtain parts and maintenance for many years on these planes. So how many of these planes are actually flight worthy remains to be seen. Maybe half. Iran doesn't have much of an air force. If Azerbaijan was invading them, or the Taliban was invading them, the air force would be useful. But against America and Israel and NATO, child's play to get rid of their planes. Their anti-missile systems are not at all capable of knocking down stealth jets. That they don't have a defense for. So when the planes come with stealth planes, they don't really understand what they see. they get the location of the plane, the stealth plane, within 25 miles. And you can't shoot at it because you don't know exactly where it is. They need to get it down. They need to know where the plane is, probably within 10 or 20 yards, something like that. So they could put a proximity missile up that blows up near it and then shrapnel hits the plane, or else a heat seeker and actually hits the plane. But they can't do that with stealth jets. They don't have this technology. So they can't really defend themselves. When they turn their radar on, the Americans are going to put anti-radar missiles on that are going to catch the track of the radar, the beam, fly right into it and blow the radar up. So the radar is the first that the Americans are going to take out. That means their air defenses are shot. That means with their antiquated Air Force, America now has ground superiority, and there we go. But where is America going to come in from? They're going to come in from the sea, from the Persian Gulf. They're going to do a beachhead landing. They could stage troops in the UAE, which is close. Saudi is close. Jordan is not that close, but close. And maybe one or two other countries that might help them, like Kuwait. Okay? And Israel. But Israel's not that close. So that starts to explain the 56 warships in theater in the Middle East. It's designed to hit Iran. Okay? What would the mechanics be of a beach head landing in Iran? Well, first, America will try bombing Iran. They'll make several bomb runs and see if Iran backs off. They won't. Forget it. So what Iran does is they bomb the beachhead heavily. And I mean heavily. That's bombing with planes and missiles and rockets. Heavy. Could they clear out enough forces to be able to do a beachhead landing after a week or two of bombing? Yeah. They should be able to. Now the troops are on the beachhead. They've got tanks, mobile artillery, field hospitals, supplies, all of that stuff, right? Now what do they got to do? Well, the capital city of Iran is Tehran, Tehran. It's approximately, depending on where on the beachhead we're talking, 600 miles from the shore. To do a successful invasion, you have to take the capital of the country over. As you look at Putin, always wanting to go after Kiev in Ukraine. This goes without saying, but there's many other big cities in Iran. They've got about 40 million people. Their military is about 900,000 regular soldiers. And they could always, start a draft and draft 300,000, 400,000 or 500,000-600,000 more soldiers. But you got to understand that you can't just draft a soldier and give him a uniform and a haircut and say, now you're in the army now. You got to run them through some training. From the time they start drafting the person where he actually shows up to the time he's actually put in combat. In other words, he understands what a tank is, understands artillery, understands mortars, machine guns, trenching, foxholes, K-rations, military protocol, all of this stuff, and knows how to shoot a weapon. It's going to be normally about 6 months. They could probably accelerate it to three months. That takes a long time. And you got to probably leave a month or 6 weeks to get the draft going and get them to report for duty. And how many of them could they train at the same time? 100,000? Probably not. 20, 30,000? Probably. So that's an option, but it's not a great option for Iran. Does Iran have thousands and thousands and thousands of all kinds of missiles already laid up? Yes. Has Iran fortified themselves against an invasion? For years they have. The beachhead is probably heavily fortified. Okay? Artillery, bunkers, rockets, missiles, all kinds of things. So it's going to take some weeks, probably 1 to 3 weeks of bombing to get rid of them, to open up the beachhead. Okay, but that doesn't get them anywhere. Now they're on the beach. How do they get in? There's a lot of big cities in Iran. Iran has a lot of mountainous, high mountains, very high, treacherous terrain to go through. Deserts, horrible deserts where you could step and sink into mud. You don't see it. Vehicles can't traverse it safely. So they got to get to the cities which are in the north, the beaches in the south. And along the way, the IRGC is going to be buried in this rough terrain, in caves, in all kinds of situations, tunnels. And they're going to have lots of artillery and immature missiles. Not the real good, expensive ones with big launches, little ones. They go a few miles, maybe they go 8 miles, 10 miles, enough to make the troops miserable trying to do a convoy to get into the north of Iran. They'll also have tanks there, which shoot artillery. How long will something like this take? Weeks. The bombing doesn't work well now. They're embedded in mountains and caves and tunnels. The bombing will do something, but not enough. Look at us and Hamas. 34, 35 days of bombing, and they're still shooting missiles. It's not going to be, if anything, it'll be worse in Iran for the Americans. Much worse. So how are they going to be able to advance? Very slowly. Could they airlift them in and attack the big cities? That's a bad idea. They could. It's a massive undertaking to airlift hundreds of thousands of soldiers because the fighting in these big cities is going to be massive. And now they don't have any lines because behind them are the enemies hiding in the rough mountainous terrain and the desert. So what do? They can't do that. It's not a good idea. It's a big fight ahead. Can America do this? Yes. Can America actually successfully invade Iran and conquer it? Yes. It's the price they have to pay. Because they're facing a huge, much bigger, much more massive war in the Pacific against China. The way that stacks up is China against Taiwan. Then Japan's against China, so China's against Japan. Then South Korea would also be against China, so North Korea attacks South Korea. The fringe things are Guam, Australia, the Philippines, and that's not of primary importance. So America already has, I think, 3 aircraft carriers in theater in the Pacific. And these countries are going to want American weapons, missiles, and so forth, which America's not going to have much to give. And then to add it off, at the same time, Russia attacks Poland with Belarus and Kaliningrad. And now America and NATO have to go defend against that. More American assets going to Europe. That's your basic snare. America can't do it all by herself, and there's not that much they don't have a China or a Russia to come help them. They got the UK, they got France, Germany, that's about the only substantial assets, allies they could get. I'll be right back. This whole thing is a snare coming from Jehovah on the daughter of Babylon. It's not just something worked out by Iran and Russia and China. It's God doing it. This is the destruction of daughter of Babylon. Excuse me for nibbling, but I haven't eaten anything all day. I'm getting lightheaded, so I'm eating something. So, Biden doesn't know what to do. So we have hesitancy coming from Biden. He doesn't know what to do. He just, really, I mean, truly, he's in this and he doesn't understand. And it keeps getting worse. He would like to make sure that there's no winner in Gaza. Gaza loses and Israel loses. And he wins. That's his game plan. Okay? And here, Yafa. Yafi. Okay, now go. That's his plan. We're coming to critical mass now because what happens next? After the rockets stop flying, Hezbollah is likely to start enhancing their attacks in Israel to keep us suppressed and to keep drawing America deeper and deeper into the snare. America could break their word to Israel and say, well, we know that we got on nationwide, worldwide TV and said we were going to help you. if another front opens, but we changed our mind. I'm having trouble with the Wi-Fi network. They're capable of it, but it's not likely. Okay? So they're going to have to start bombing Hezbollah. They're never going to do a ground invasion in Hezbollah. They'll take jets and fly over and hit targets and help Israel and do reconnaissance, and they'll really help. More bombs being used up, more assets, more problems, okay? And that's consistent with the goals of China, Russia, and Iran. I put a picture up on my Telegram yesterday of 2 Chinese guys that Israel found in the Hamas tunnels. There are no Chinese people in Gaza, okay? These are Chinese military or intelligence agents over there helping them. Oh, you better believe they got into interrogation. Oh, you better believe it. And you better believe the American Special Forces were inside in the room during those interrogations, or they were outside looking through the one-way mirror. You better believe it. We got a picture of them. There's no Chinatown in Gaza. They don't have this. They don't have the Chinese restaurants in the world. They forget about it. It's not San Francisco. There's no Chinatown there. There's no Chinese people in there. How did they get in? Through Egypt. How they got in is not that important, but what were they doing inside the tunnels? Come on, it's a no-brainer. So that shows you, there's a picture on my Telegram yesterday of these 2 Chinese guys. They didn't look happy, they were caught. And Israel is not going to give them a very nice, comfortable interrogation. They're not going to cave in and get scared like the Hamas guys do. They're going to go through extended, enhanced interrogation. Sleep deprivation, all kinds of things. America and Israel really want to know what happened. America would probably like to take over the interrogation, but Israel won't let that one go. That's a big fish. What's China going to do about that? Deny it. What do you think they're going to do? Ignore it. They don't care. Now, I saw a picture of 2. There's probably a lot more than 2. You know, probably 25 or 50 of them running around over there. And that means China's helping with weapons and stuff like that, because it's part of the snare. Hamas is part of it, the beginner. Okay? To get Israel mad. Israel starts a massive attack on Hamas. The rest of the Muslim states rise up. You see it? America gets scared. Starts sending assets over here. Don't want to lose the Middle East. This is just the early stages of the snare. Well, we're maybe even moving into the beginning of the middle, but it's moving ahead. America's walking in nicely into the snare. So, Biden's at a loss. He doesn't know what to do. He knows if he gets deep into Iran, he's weak. And Russia will provoke NATO. If he does nothing, like Russia will take over Poland, and when he takes over Poland, which he could easily do without NATO, he'll easily do it. What happens then is they can't bring weapons into Ukraine because they pass through Poland. 14 or so days after Ukraine stops getting weapons, Russia will be in Kiev. Or maybe a month. At the end of Ukraine will fall. And now Putin would have Belarus, Ukraine, Kaliningrad, and Poland. Next would come Georgia and Moldova. That would take, I don't know, 1 or 2 weeks to knock those places off, a month maximum. And then Putin will go after, like Denmark, Sweden, Norway, countries like that, Latvia, Lithuania. Then the USSR will almost be formed. Romania will probably get it. You know, it'd be a big, long war and campaign, but see, Putin can't do that with a big, bad America. No. China can't take out Taiwan and Japan and South Korea with North Korea's help with a big, bad America. So what do? These countries are dying under sanctions from America, which Trump was the sanctions king. And he started it, and Biden took the lead and is running with it. But the problem is that Biden's not an on-the-ball president, okay? And now he's really scared. And when a president is scared, mistakes get made. Now, the Pentagon might be telling him, we're screwed here, Joe. You got to pull away from someplace. Either sacrifice the Pacific, then we can handle the Middle East and Europe. Or sacrifice Ukraine, and then we can handle the Middle East and the Pacific. Or sacrifice the Middle East, and we can handle Russia and China. Then Biden will go back and say, give me a plan where we can handle all three. And that might lead to a draft in America. It might. A draft in America will rip America apart. Why? They ended the draft around 1975, and they just drafted men. I remember I was involved back then. I was draft age. I never got drafted. So since then, women's rights soared. Okay? And women are in combat units in America. They fly aircraft and all kinds of things. They command Navy vessels, destroyers, and submarines. I don't know about submarines, but anyway, they were very active in the military. They have 4-star generals and admirals that are women and everything else. So, how can America turn around and say, we're only going to draft the men? The men would file countless cases in the Supreme Court that they're being discriminated against negatively by getting drafted where the women aren't. And they would be right. And it's going to happen. I think you'll see the draft. Now, American draft is a slow boat. First thing they'll do, and they've already been running the selective service system since 1975. They never stopped it. There's selective service, that's the draft board. It's selective service system offices all around the United States. And they have active employees and everything else. They will, I feel much better after eating. They will, the men have to register, and I think they changed it with the women having to register. I'm not sure. If they haven't, they'll enforce it quickly. And they'll start calling them for physicals. And they'll have to report to a location near them. If it's not that near, they'll give them a ticket to get a bus or something like that and go to wherever it is. It might be 100 or 200 miles away, or I don't know how they'll do it. And they need to go through a physical, and the physical I went through it in the 70s myself. They sent us, you had to go to Whitehall Street. They sent you a token for the subway, which was valued at 15 cents. They gave you 2 tokens, if I remember correctly. You had to go down there at a certain time, and you showed up, and they had you change into your underwear. And then they marched you around, and they did, first they did a written test, which a lot of the people in the ghetto, people were failing the written test, probably on purpose, but a lot of them never went past, 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, or whatever, 8th grade, maybe, you needed an 8th grade education to pass it. You didn't need a high school diploma to get in the military then. And they would fail it probably on purpose, some of them, some not on purpose. But I was, at that point, a college graduate. How the heck was I going to get away with failing it? Anyway, then they put you in a hearing booth with headphones. Then they had you read an eye chart with your glasses, without your glasses. Then they took urine. Then they tested for hernia. Then they listened to your heart. They looked in your eyes and your throat and your nose and your ears. They didn't take blood. Did they? I can't recall. They might have, but I don't think so. And that was the end of your physical. You were in and out of there. You weren't there a long time, hour and a half or something. And you went home. And then they would classify you. And then you could start filing objections and stuff like that. I got out on a 1Y, a medical thing based on skin. And then they send you to, well, you go home, and then maybe a month or 2, some weeks later, you get in the mail a classification card telling you your, I don't remember, 1A, I think, was that you could get drafted any time. 4F would mean you're never going to get drafted. A 1Y would mean they would draft you only in a national emergency. And they had other deferments, all kinds of, different deferments, 2S was the student deferment, but they don't do that. They're not going to do that this war, where you go to college and get deferred, but they won't do that. The Vietnam War was in my day, and that was not a war that was of any threat to the United States. There was nothing in the world the Viet Cong and the Vietnamese people could do to mainland America. That is not the case with Iran. Okay, so basically, till America gets a person into the draft board, gets him registered, gets him in the draft board, gets him a physical, classifies him, and inducts him. The way America moves, 3 months, and that's at high speed. That's an emergency, okay? Maybe 2 months if it was a dire emergency, all right? Now, what'll happen in America is that people aren't going to want to go. They're going to say, well, you're not drafting the women. And if they do draft the women, which I think they have to, the women are going to go nuts. I mean, there's a small percentage of American women that are going to say, what a great idea, I can be macho and all that, But there's a massive amount of American women that are gonna, what, I can't get my nails done, what about my hair? And, they're not gonna go. There's gonna be protests like crazy. What the American military used to do is if somebody really wanted to get out from being in the draft, they let them get out. But you had to really show a marked effort. Like a lot of people went to psychiatrists, a lot of people went to different kinds of doctors. You were able to get braces put on your teeth and get a deferment until the braces came off, which could be 2 years, 3 years, because they don't have orthodontia in the military. You can't, often with braces, you can't talk correctly. Okay, you can't go, you have a lisp, or, it makes you speak funny, so they don't want that. So people could, if they tried hard to get out, they got out. We had a kid in the neighborhood named Jimmy, and he went up on the ledge on Whitehall Street, 3 or 4 floors high, pretty high. It was a wide ledge, probably 2.5 to 3 feet. He climbed out, I think he was in his underwear, and he went out and he said, I'm not going to come back in until you give me a deferment. I'll jump. So they called the military police, and the city police came and they tried to talk him in. And he said, no, I'm not coming in. I want a deferment. Give me a deferment and I'm going to come in. Don't worry about it. So the doctors there figured he was Looney Tunes, and what's the point of having this happen with the newspapers, and he jumps off the ledge? What do? It's going to say in the paper people want to kill themselves before they go to Vietnam. So they said to him, the psychiatrists and the other doctors, come in, we'll give you the deferment. And they showed him some papers. He believed them, and he went in. And did they actually defer him? Absolutely. They gave him a 4F, no doubt about it. But he had to go to Bellevue Mental Hospital for 2 weeks of observation. So he went to Bellevue, and he told them he did it because he wanted to get out of the draft. And, he had to hang around for 2 weeks. He had to eat hospital food, watch the TV, hang out with the other people. It wasn't like going to prison. They weren't treating them like inmates in a jail. It was certainly a lot more freedom. You just couldn't walk around freely in the place, but you were not locked in a cell or anything like that, And after the 2 weeks, they decided he wasn't going to hurt anybody or not hurt himself, and they let him out. One kid in the neighborhood had somebody hit him in the leg with a baseball bat to get out. A lot of kids were going to psychiatrists, and they were building up histories. One kid from the neighborhood, before he went down there, drank, I think he had Cocoa Krispies with milk and all kinds of crappy sugar cereal, and drank a bunch of vodka or something with it. And I think he drank the vodka right when he was outside before he went in or something like that. And he had letters from the psychiatrist. So whenever you had a letter from a psychiatrist, or I think even a psychologist, they sent you to see the psychiatric doctor there, which they probably had 2 or 3 of those because there was a lot of people going to them. And he got himself to throw up when he was sitting there talking with the psychiatrist, and got it all over the guy's desk and everything. And they just threw him out. See, all you had to do was show them that you really were going to go to extremes to not be in, and they didn't want you, and that's what he did. So, normal times when they get a guy from when he first gets on the bus to go to the military base for basic training till he's finished and he's a private first class with a gun is about 6 months in America, during the Vietnam era anyway. I'm guessing it's probably about that now. Of course, they give them 1 or 2 weeks, they're in an induction facility, and they're giving them tests, and they're trying to figure out what to do with them. Then they not that long, a few days really. Then they go to basic training, and I think then they get the testing. and then they go to an advanced school. If they're not going to go to anything special, they're not going to be a medic, a radio communications, or a truck or bus driver, or a heavy equipment operator, or whatever, right? Mechanics, plane mechanics, or then they wind up going into infantry, and they go to something called advanced infantry training, which is probably another 6 or 8 weeks where they actually teach them more about hand grenades and machine guns and tactics and stuff like that. And then by the time the smoke clears, like in Vietnam, from the time you showed up for your first day in the military till you went into combat was about 6 months. Now, some guys longer, because medics would be trained probably, depending on what kind of medic you were going to be, it could be 6 months training. Communications could, or working radar or sonar, and could be longer. It just depends. They aptitude test you heavily to see what you're good at, and then they try to put you in training for that. That's how they do it. I think they could accelerate it to about, maybe get it from the time somebody shows up to 4 months. They're in the Middle East holding a rifle. If they're going to be in a tank crew, they're probably going to be 7, 8 months, 9 months. Of course, it's got to require a lot more training. So 6, 7 months. So it's not a fast freight train to get the military. Plus, it's going to drive the American people up a wall. They're going to go nuts. They're going to go nuts. These people, and even the parents of these kids today, don't know what it is to be in a draft. Okay? So you take a kid, let's just use round numbers, was born in the year 2000, right? Roughly. All right? So when were their parents born? Well, maybe 1975. Let's go with that. They had kids when they're 25 years old. So they don't know from a draft. But it's still there on the law books, and they can do it. That will rip America up. It will give them soldiers, because I would think today that the military themselves said a major portion of America wouldn't be eligible for draft because of obesity. They're too fat. Now, that didn't work during Vietnam. No, I don't know anybody who was obese, but they would go in and they would, the drill instructors during basic training would come around and say, you don't eat the bread, you don't eat the cake, you don't eat dessert, you don't eat this. And they're running every place they go. And they're young, so they burn off the weight. So somebody would go in even 40, 50 pounds overweight, and, they'd get out, they weren't overweight at all. They go in with a 42 waist and come out with a 32. They'd have them eat, you eat salads, you eat vegetables, you eat meat, and that's it. Drink milk probably. And they just didn't want them eating the junk, So, or the drill instructor would cut their rations down. That was it. In the military, what's warrior food? Fruit, vegetables, salad. That's what they talk about. Well, what do they train them? Don't go to fast food places, you get fat. Don't go to the restaurants, you're going to get fat. Eat healthy. That's how they do it. They don't want fat. So there's going to have trouble with the draft, There's people that are going to oppose it. They're going to say they're pro-Palestinian, they're pro-Chinese, they're peace lovers. You're going to lose a lot that way. You're going to lose people because they have real serious physical problems. like real problems. They had knee surgery, didn't turn out so good, back surgery, bad vision, bad hearing, bad skin, fallen arches, and millions of things, you know. But they're going to need more. Now, what it says to attack Iran is that America will need 600 to 800,000 soldiers. America's going to attack Iran. You cannot come up with a reason for 54 warships in the Middle East now with multiple aircraft carriers, destroyers, missile cruisers, submarines, anti-mine warfare, for any reason other than Iran. Russia is not coming to the Middle East. They got their hands full in Europe. China is not coming to the Middle East. If China goes ahead and brings 800,000 soldiers into the Middle East or some crazy thing like that, America will just swoop down on China, and then they'll be in the snare. They're not going to do it. The same with Russia. Russia's not going far from home. Russia borders Belarus, Kaliningrad's right near there, and they hit Poland, and Poland stops the weapons transfer into Ukraine. Then Russia gets a victory in Ukraine. So America is, to use street terms, in the trick bag. And it's a snare, and they don't know how to get out of it. And there really is no way out of it. America can say, we're going to leave the Middle East. If they do that, and they close the American bases, and they drop Israel, and they go back to America, the snare is not sprung. And it's still continuing, but it's not going anywhere. Okay? They could then try to draw America into another field of combat someplace, perhaps the Panama Canal, although I don't think that would work. I don't know where else they could draw America in. I don't think they would. So it's going to work. The great hammer of the whole earth, the great voice, where all the countries in the United Nations come to meet, is not going to fold. They're going to go through with it. Biden's scared, but he's going to have to go through with it. Being scared doesn't mean he won't go through with it. In Japan, there was a lot of generals and military people and politicians that didn't want the Pearl Harbor attack. They were scared of it. The guy leading the attack, the admiral that led the attack on Pearl Harbor, was, when they talk about it in the movies, he said, yeah, we won. Everybody's saying, yeah, we won, we had a victory. He says, yeah, but now we woke up the sleeping lion. He knew it was a bad thing. Another general from Japan, when we were asking him about invading America, he said, how could you invade America? Everybody has a gun. He knew you couldn't do it. Does everybody have a gun in Iran? No. Iran has 346 aircraft. America has 14,000. The aircraft in Iran are old and mishmash. They're in poor maintenance. They're short of parts. Maybe a half of them are flying, and they're not going to do much damage. America will take them down. They'll try to use them against America landing on the beachhead, and they'll get shot down. Before America lands on the beachhead, they have to make the Persian Gulf safe. This is hard. Why? Iran has a navy. It's either 40 or 60 ships. Most of them are not very threatening to America. Believe me, they're not very threatening, okay? Their 1,500 go-fast boats are very threatening. The go-fast boats go very fast. They can shoot torpedoes, launch missiles, have machine guns. various weapons. They could just have simple shoulder-fired weapons with the guys on the boat. 1,500 plus. They could send 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 or 80 at an aircraft carrier with a few dozen drones, overwhelm the aircraft carrier defenses and blow up aircraft carriers. This is possible. Along comes 5 United States Coast Guard cutters last week with 1 anti-mine warfare ship from the United States Coast Guard. Now, these are not capital ships. These are, this sounds cynical, disposable assets in the Navy. They don't care about them, okay? They're lightly weaponized compared to the Navy, and they're Coast Guard, not Navy. Now, in times of war, the Coast Guard becomes under the jurisdiction of the Navy. But they're not ships America's worried about using, and they're going to put those. They're in the Persian Gulf. They're down by the Sea of Oman, so they're going to. They also have the A-10 AWAC planes in the UAE. They got, I think, 24 of them. These are phenomenal planes. Okay, these planes got old school technology that's been enhanced. It has a single cannon on it called a Gatling gun, which has 6 barrels. It shoots 20 millimeter shells at the rate of 3,900 a minute. No, yeah, a minute. When you hear this thing shoot, it goes like, it's that fast. So it's computer controlled, radar controlled. It has all the latest things. A 20 millimeter slug. I mean, these things are like this. It's like a miniature artillery piece. Really, it's like a miniature artillery piece. It's got a range of 5 miles. 5 miles. A 50 caliber can go maybe a mile. This is 5 miles. 1 pound projectile. They can have projectiles that are armor piercing and incendiary. They can have explosive and armor piercing. They could have explosive and incendiary. These boats are not armored, so they would probably just use incendiary and explosive. So they see these go-fast boats. The plane doesn't break the sound barrier, but it's fast. It's good enough to stay away from any defenses a little go-fast boat has. They can't have radar on these boats or anything like that. So it could be a shoulder-fired weapon aimed at them, which they should be able to evade. They have countermeasures and stuff on the plane. They see the go-fast boat, which is maybe 60, 70 feet. He locks his computer-controlled gun on it, and maybe 1/4 of a second, and it sprays a hail of these bullets into the boat and shreds the boat. If you got 24 of these things flying around, well, they wouldn't have them all at the same time. They might have 10 or 12 at the same time. They could run around shredding a whole lot of go-fast boats. Okay? Regular fighter jets could do it, but it's more expensive. The fighter jet, they have guns. They could train the gun on it, but they don't want the fighter jet exposed up there like that. The A-10 AWAC is not as anywhere near as expensive as a fighter jet. I don't believe. I could be wrong, but I doubt it. And I heard they're upgrading these Gatling guns now on these boats, but they're so ferocious now. I mean, the soldiers love them because if they get into trouble in combat on the ground, the AWACS come and they see where the enemy soldiers are, and they're, and it just bullets flying everywhere. They just shred them. They shred the enemy in a few seconds. It's over. Where they used to use napalm in the past, but napalm's not acceptable. Burning the enemy alive is not considered acceptable behavior today, so they don't really use napalm. They'll use an AWAC, which is reminiscent of the plane in Vietnam called Puff the Magic Dragon. It had some of these Gatling guns mounted in it, and it would just lay bullets down like crazy. So if the American soldiers were getting overrun, and they could get Puff the Magic Dragon out there in time, it would just annihilate all the invaders. But normally what they did is they used napalm instead. And they burned the enemy up when they were trying to overrun the base. Let's see if I got anything in the chat I need dealing with for a moment, and we'll get back to it. The harvest does not mean the workers are few. That's you're speaking to something. I was speaking of the Matthew 13 harvest where the tares are taken out and the wheat is brought into the barn, which is Israel. You're talking about the harvest is great, but the workers are few. That's a valid harvest scripture in the scripture. On that point, you're right, but I'm referencing the Matthew 13 harvest. The world isn't falling apart, it's falling in place for God's plans, yes. The snare. The lost sheep are not unbelievers, but believers they're not. No, you're incorrect. The scriptures say the sheep are people. That's not a correct statement. You have no scriptures, you're just throwing stuff out there, you know. America will try to protect its own. Well, you're quoting stuff from Daniel, which is still a sealed book, and I don't know what kind of point you're trying to make. You're off. I would think you're off topic. It's not making any sense to me. But uh, people that come in and try to dominate the chat are usually the enemy, and I'm well aware of that. Okay. They don't come here to listen to me. They come here to preach their own message, which is usually doctrines of demons. All right. So let's get back into this a little bit with more details about what America is going to be facing or is actually facing right now. Iran is about the size of Alaska. It's the 17th largest country in the world. Invading such a thing like this is light years away from Lebanon or Gaza. It has many large mountains that are perfect for their soldiers to hide in with artillery, missile launches, and everything else. There is no good best bet for a land border invasion. They could use Turkey, but Turkey's a Muslim state. They're not going to go for it, even though they're in NATO. They won't agree to it. Iraq, they would have to conquer Iraq to do it. Iraq's trying to throw them out. Close your American bases and get out of here. They're going to be attacking you. Get out of here. Leave. They're not going to help them. Syria is not really close enough. America could stage in Iraq if that were possible and then get in there. They could stage in Kuwait, but there's still some rough terrain crossing to get in there. And Kuwait's a Muslim nation, and they're probably not going to help them. Okay? And Kuwait would then be attacked by Iraq. If we stage in any of these countries, Iran will have them attacked by militias or missile attack them or both. So the staging could become difficult. So a sea attack takes them away from that exposure. Before they really do this, they got to clean up the threat of these militia groups in Iraq and Syria attacking their bases. And they're in the beginning stages of that. They're walking timidly. Biden's scared. The UAE, Saudi, and Kuwait would likely allow America to stage military forces there for the invasion. This has already started. Jordan, too. It's already in play. They're doing it for weeks now. That has already happened. Moving aircraft and supplies and equipment into these countries has already happened. It's probably at the final stages. The military in Jordan is probably there for a few reasons. One is to protect Jordan. And by protecting Jordan, it also, as a side effect, stops the border between the West Bank and Jordan from being overrun by crazy militias and attacking Israel in the West Bank. So rest assured, Iran knows the most vulnerable area is the shore, the South Shore, the coastline, the beach by the Persian Gulf, and that's probably fortified, landmines, or who knows what, built up. So again, to start, they got to bomb the coast so they can land on the beach, and that's probably a week or two of bombing. And then they're going to have special forces come in first, Rangers, Recon Marines, SEALs, and various Marine Raiders, various forces will go in on the front to, get rid of, as much as they can. They'll have heavy air support, they'll have helicopters, planes, they'll have missiles from the boats, and, all kinds of stuff. Before they do this invasion, they got to get rid of the go-fast boats. So we should be looking for some provocations, which I think the Coast Guard cutters are. And you probably also see some destroyers and missile cruisers and other types of war vessels in there to draw out the go-fast boats. The go-fast boats would be too much of a risk to bring troop carriers in and stuff like that, so they'll be gone. Iran's current military totals in at about 900,000. They have 2,800 tanks. That's a lot of tanks, but they're not all that advanced. But even if they're immature tanks, bullets are going to bounce off them. Shrapnel from an artillery miss that lands nearby is going to bounce off it. So that's an obstacle that needs dealing with. The Oman, Kuwait, UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Jordan may join in and contribute some soldiers to this effort, but if they do, which is possible because they're afraid of Iran, they'll come up with 10,000 soldiers each or something like that, which will help. I mean, collectively, if America leans on them, they might actually raise 100,000 soldiers. It'll help, and it'll show unity that that the neighboring countries around Iran hate their guts, These countries are already hosting American troops and equipment, so yeah, they'll probably kick in. I don't think any of them is going to send 40 or 50,000 soldiers. They don't have such big armies, and that's a big deal for them, and they're worried about their own country's defenses. I could see 10 or 20,000. Plus planes, plus tanks, plus this, plus that. You know, they'll kick in. Iran is probably not likely to get that many high-end missiles from Russia these days because Russia's so involved in Ukraine. That worked in America's favor a little bit, but not so much. China probably has extra missiles they can give Iran, which they probably already did. Same with North Korea. So one of the big ways to deter America invading is for Iran to attack American bases in the region. That would draw American military resources to these other countries, which is already being done. You see, Iran expects the invasion. It's coming. Remember, from the beach in Iran to Tehran is 600 miles, and Tehran's not the only city they got to take over. Imagine taking these cities over. They're much bigger than Gaza City, much more sophisticated cities. You'll have the Iranian soldiers in plain clothes shooting at the Americans with AK-47s, RPGs, anti-tank weapons, who knows what else. Improvised explosive devices with, remote control will be planted all over the place. Tunnels like you won't believe. Snipers. It'll be a brutal fight. The population of the capital of Iran is called Tehran, and it's 16 million people. It's like, I think, bigger than Mexico City, or about the same size. Can you imagine? It's twice New York City, rough cut, trying to invade and occupy something like that. The civilian casualties in Iran will probably go into the millions. The genocide will be screaming on the worldwide media. American genocide. The Iranians will do the same thing that the Hamas does in Gaza. They're not going to let the people evacuate the cities. Where are they going to go? How do you evacuate 16 million people from a city? Let's talk about that. Where are you going to put them? America can do this and they can win, but it'll cost them. If America begins to invade Iran, they probably will, Russia and China will probably attack in their respective areas, Poland and Taiwan, once they see America's committed to this attack. And that will probably cause the sleeper agents in Europe and America to be activated, which will cause chaos in America in a big way. And there'll be demonstrations against the war, for the war, blaming Israel, blaming Biden, blaming the open borders. It will have no limit. Okay? Ruler fighting ruler will occur. It's a real ugly, ugly, ugly war, and that's why you see Biden so scared. He's just sitting here treading water. He doesn't know what to do. When this starts, America is going to be relegated, Israel rather, will be relegated into like a back burner position. What do I mean? I mean, they're no longer going to worry about Israel that much, and that's God's plan. They're going to worry about drawing America deeper into the snare and knocking America out in the homeland and in Europe and in the Pacific. That's what their goal is. And they'll say we can always just come back and pick off Israel after. Once we get rid of America, Israel's no problem. None of them are counting on the two witnesses. I'll be back in a minute. None of them understand that. They don't believe it's going to come to pass. They think they beat God or something like that, these Satans. I'm sorry, honey. All right. The big thing coming up on the world is, and Israel, is what happens to the 45,000 Hamas soldiers. Do we kill them all and there'll be a world outcry about genocide? That's what Israel would like to do. Will America stop Israel from doing it, or will America just let Israel do it? Austin will get out there and say, well, Israel does what it wants, we just help them. We give them military equipment, they make their own plans, and then the blame falls on Israel. And then Iran will feel obligated to do more and rise up, and they pull Iran in deeper. But Iran is really taking them into the snare, but overall God is bringing them all into his snare. And that's what's going on. America is already in position to attack Iran by air and by sea, not for a ground invasion. There's no way they can mobilize hundreds of thousands of soldiers without us all knowing about it. And some countries will help them. France, England, they'll get help. They'll get help. They won't need to supply all the soldiers, but they'll probably have to come up with 500,000, which they'll do. Let's read Isaiah 47 and match that to what's going on now with Iran. All right, let me look in on the chat and make sure everything's okay and I don't have unanswered questions. Yeah, I said America, the snare for America is Jeremiah 50:24. I read that, I believe. That's how people treat me. Well, look, you have a screen name called Blasphemous Liar. What's blasphemy? Speaking evil against God. So how should I treat you? I don't know many people that are believers that call themselves a blasphemous liar. Isaiah 47:1. Come down and sit in the dust, O virgin daughter of Babylon. That's America. Sit in the dust means what? Mourning. Lots have been killed. Another rocket's coming in somewhere in Israel. Lots of them are killed. They're mourning, sitting in the dust. Or sit on the ground. There is no throne, O daughter of the Chaldeans. Chaldeans were like astrologers, fortune tellers. They'd read the liver, stupid stuff, which is what Americans are very big on. When print newspapers used to be prominent in America, I'm old, every single paper I ever knew of had astrology in there. Every single one. For thou shalt no more be called, and that's what a Chaldean was doing, predominantly astrology. For thou shalt no more be called tender and delicate. Take the millstones and grind meal. Well, that means that the country's busted up and they got to grind their own meal. Uncover thy locks, uncover your hair. Make bare the leg, uncover the thigh. Stop it, chief, no. Pass over the rivers. Thy nakedness shall be uncovered. That means all her dirty secrets are going to be revealed. Thy shame shall be seen. I will take vengeance and will not meet thee as a man. He's going to come at him as God, not a man. As for our Redeemer, hint, year of redemption now, the Lord of hosts is his name, the Holy One of Israel, Kadosh Israel. Sit thou silent and get thee into darkness, O daughter of the Chaldeans. So I guess their power's not working, or it's the Chosik darkness. Let's see if that's the word. Chosik, that's the darkness that was put on Israel, that they couldn't see the hand in front of their face, and they had no ability to light anything in their house. They couldn't light a torch or a fire or cook or anything. But it was so dark outside, they couldn't go outside. And at the same time, the Israelites in Goshen in Egypt had light in their houses, not outside, but God did that supernaturally. What's been done once will be done again. It looks like it's being done again here. O daughter of the Chaldeans, for thou shalt no more be called the Lady of Kingdoms. Why? Because America runs the show. I was wroth with my people, that's Israel. I have polluted mine inheritance and given them into thine hand. There's as many known members of Judah in Israel, just about in Israel, I think there's 6.6 million and there's 6.5 million in America. It's almost the same thing. Into thy hand, thou didst show them no mercy. I grew up there, lots of discrimination. Upon the ancient, the elders, hast thou very heavily laid thy yoke. Yep. And thou saidst, I shall be a lady forever. Nope, that's their attitude. See, they don't think they're going to get defeated. They think they can do a three-front war and survive. For thou saidst, I shall be a lady forever. You see how it's coming? They won't back off. Push comes to shove, they're going to move forward and think they can do it. The snare. Thou didst not lay these things to thy heart, neither didst thou remember the latter end of it. Therefore hear now this, thou that art given to pleasure, that dwellest carelessly. That's how America lives. They open the border, they think nothing can take them down. That saith in thy heart, I am and none else beside me. They think they're the greatest country in the world, and period. I shall not sit as a widow, that means losing the land, married to the land. Neither shall I know the loss of children, the espots. But these two things shall come upon to thee in a moment. In one day, it happens suddenly in one day. You've got to understand this attack is very fast. The loss of children and widowhood, they shall come upon thee in their perfection. And their perfection is the perfect snare. It's the perfect storm, so to speak. It's called the snare, not a storm. But you get my point. For the multitude of thy sorceries and for the great abundance of thine enchantments. That's how they live. That's how their industries work and their governments work and everything. For thou hast trusted in thy wickedness. They only know the dark side. They only know the evil. Thou hast said, none seeth me. Oh no, everything's written down in a book. Thy wisdom and thy knowledge, it hath perverted thee. And thou hast said in thine heart, I am, or really the word am is added. It says it's said in thy heart, I and none else beside me. You see it? They don't think they are going to lose. They think they're going to be able to push in and take care of everything. They are wrong. But they don't know it. That's the delusion. That's the snare. Therefore shall evil come upon thee, thou shalt not know from whence it riseth. They got in this trap and they don't know what to do. And mischief, that's more like evil too, shall fall upon thee, thou shalt not be able to put it off. They can't put it off now. They don't know what to do. If they do nothing, what happens? Russia starts with Poland, then Ukraine, then Georgia, then Romania or Moldova, and then Denmark, Sweden, Norway, Latvia, Lithuania, and then they keep getting more and more countries. And then what happens? They lose the whole Pacific. North Korea hits South Korea, China hits Japan and Taiwan, and then the Philippines, and then Guam, and then Australia, and then New Zealand, and da 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 da. America can't do nothing. If they do nothing, they're still going to get it. If you start the war, the thought generally is you'll have less damages, less casualties. Thou shalt not be able to put it off. See, they're not going to get out of this one. And desolation shall come upon thee suddenly, and thou shalt not know. Stand now with thine enchantments and with the multitude of thy sorceries, wherein thou hast labored from thy youth. If so be thou shalt be able to profit, if so be thou mayest prevail. It won't be. Thou art wearied in the multitude of thy counsels. Let now the astrologers, the stargazers, the monthly procrastinators stand up and save thee from these things that shall come upon thee. Now you know what these things are. They got enemies within with the sleeper agents. They're really messed up. Behold, they shall be as stubble. The fires shall burn them. See, they're going to get burned. There's going to be fires in and around their cities. They shall not deliver themselves from the power of the flame, like Egypt. Well, no, not exactly like Egypt. There shall not be a coal to warm at, nor fire to sit before. That'll be like Egypt. But Egypt didn't burn up. They'll burn up, and they're not going to be able to light fires in their house and stuff like that. Thus shall they be unto thee with whom thou hast labored, even thy merchants from thy youth. They shall wander every one to his quarter, and none shall save thee. See, it's coming on them, and they don't even see it coming. It's so, I mean, they see it coming now, but they don't know what to do about it. They're real confused. And they're going to stay confused until it's over. They're not going to make it. Well, according to the scriptures, Jehovah's hand would be more or less against America, the daughter of Babylon, not out there to protect them. I don't know what you meant by that. You could have went either way on that. I don't know. That's what America's facing right now. And it's trying to figure out what to do. Like it says in Isaiah 47, they're not real sure which way to go. They don't know what to do. They don't know. That's your snare. And it's closing fast. Iran is not giving America any safe quarter. America could run out of the Middle East, and then they'll just figure America's scared and just push her in other areas of the world. Or America can attack Iran, which is what they want. They want to see this big mobilization of military for Iran because it can't defend the homeland. Russia and China may not bother attacking Europe and the Pacific. They may just wait till America mobilizes in the Middle East and then attack America directly, thinking they could always go back later and get Taiwan and Japan and South Korea and Europe when America's defunct, and then get Israel too. They don't plan on the two witnesses. They don't understand. They don't think the Bible's going to come true, and they're all messed up. This is the snare. All right. This is the snare. So my name's Moshe. My wife's Rivka. Please pray for us, for our peace, safety, protection, joy, healing. Thank you for those giving offerings. Much appreciated. Pray for our animals and pets, for them to be happy, healthy, and whole. They're all rescues. Pray I don't have to go in the bomb shelter. People ask me. Yes, it's all the houses have bomb shelters here. It's illegal to build houses without a bomb shelter. So they all got them. I actually have an old one going back to 1948 in the backyard, and I have a more modern one. So thank you for praying for us. I appreciate all the prayers, and pray for better videos. And I'll keep you updated. And but this is a great match between current events and Bible prophecy. It really is. It's a super cool lineup, you know, although the world doesn't see it. And I send my Shabbat Shalom to all those who love Yeshua HaMashiach. And that's it. I hope this helped, and I'm out. Thank you.